move us. I'll get you to talk about that. I'll get you to share the writing that you want to share. So your reading of your text. Are you going to sing it, or are you just going to read it?
Oh, no. We have not warmed up for that. But also the sound quality on Zoom is not that great. So.
Right. Well, let's go with that as a thought. And then I thought we could talk about your work. So talk about Hold, a bit about Hold, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I can do that.
As the first work that you kind of solely generated,
yeah,
I would say.
Baby's first soul writing. Yeah, sorry, I'm doing like my sign name at the same time. Yeah, long sexy hair with an M, which sucks if I cut my hair, but anyway. Yes.
Don't worry, mine is Freckles with an M.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Since I was a girl.
That's beautiful. Yes, I can talk about Hold for sure. I mean, that was massive, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I want to talk about the importance of you, or your commitment to embedding access in the making of that, and how that was important in the process. And then talking about disability leadership. What is that? Why is it important? What does it mean to you? I can feed in and kind of say, Arts Access Victoria is now a disability-led organisation. What does that mean for us? Blah, blah, blah. And then if there's time, we'll get some questions from people if they've got them. And then we'll say, see you later.
Sounds good.
Alrighty, just letting you both know we are live on YouTube and the Arts Front site. So I'm now going to mute myself and disappear into the background.
Great, thank you. So why did I get my phone out? Oh, it's to have the housekeeping.
You can put it in the chat if you like, Carla.
Oh, that would be wise. Thanks.
No worries, I'll send it to you privately.
Thanks.
Oh, I forgot to tell you guys, I'm going on radio after this to talk about the arts dinners.
Nice.
Our newsletter, people think that's amazing. So I'll mention Little Lunches as well.
Great.
That come through okay?
Yep, thank you very much. Hi folks, and welcome to today's Little Lunch Online, hosted by Artsfront. My name is Caroline Bowditch and I am the CEO at Arts Access Victoria. For those of you who don't know, Arts Access Victoria has been around for 45 years and is committed to raising the profile and voices of deaf and disabled artists throughout the state. We also cross over state lines, which is what's happening today in our conversation that we're going to be having with Madeline Little, who is based in Queensland. I wanted to just run through some housekeeping before I launch into our brilliant conversation that we're going to have today, to let people know that today's lunch will be 30 minutes long. It's being recorded and streamed live on YouTube, and will be available for viewing afterwards at www.llol.com.au. I would ask that you please keep your mic muted when you're not speaking. we really welcome you introducing yourself in the Zoom chat and let us know whose country you're on today. And you can also use the chat to ask any questions, and I'll be keeping a watch on that. Today's session is also being live paraphrase captioned, and if you would like to access the captions, click on the closed captions button at the bottom of your screen. And we've also got Michelle as our Auslan interpreter today. If you need to use Michelle's services, please click on her image and pin her to your screen, then she won't disappear. So I am coming to you today from the lands of the Boonwurrung people. I'm coming from Boonwurrung country. And I recently found out that St Kilda, where I live, was the land where stone grinding was done. Lots of axes were made from stone on the beaches of St Kilda, just 3 minutes away from where I am. So I found out a little bit of history, which is a lovely thing. Originally, I was born on Yorta Yorta land in the northeast of Victoria, and I still feel very much attached to that country as well. I want to acknowledge the elders, past, present, and emerging on all of the countries that we meet on or are on today, and acknowledge the incredible history, traditions, and wisdom that we attempt to make the most of on a daily basis. So I want to now introduce Madeline Young, or Maddie, as she's known to me. Maddie is a passionate theatre maker and performer who has a commitment and an significant interest in accessible theatre practice. And Maddie is dedicated to a disability-led future with a mission to pursue greater opportunities, resources, advocacy, and recognition for all deaf and disabled artists and arts workers in Australia. And I first came to know about Maddie when I had not long started my job at Arts Access Victoria, when she applied for the inaugural Stella Young Award in 2018. And when the whole panel read Maddie's application, we were completely blown away by her alignment, I suppose, to lots of the sentiments that Stella had and has left with us. And she felt absolutely fitting to take on or to be awarded with that award in its first year. And one of the things, Maddie, that you talked about in the application was you really came out as a disabled person, which is something that some people have an experience of, but often isn't talked about. And I wondered if you could share that with people, if you're up for that.
For sure.
What was that like for you?
For sure. Hello, everyone. Hi. Coming out as a disabled person, and it's interesting to phrase it like that, but that's definitely what it was. I think up until probably that year or so, I had pretty much spent about 20 or so years of my life being like, okay, I'm a person with a disability, but that's separate to who I am. It's not anyone's business. It's fine. It's whatever. And I definitely went through my undergraduate drama degree with that mentality that, sure, I needed to change some things so that I could participate, but it's not something I ever thought about as an access requirement that I was entitled to. It always felt very burdensome. And it was through going to Perth in, I think it was 2017, and participating in a residency with Jenny Seeley, who, for those who don't know, is the artistic director of Grey Eye Theatre Company in the UK, and attending a day's worth of the Meeting Place conference as well, where there was this conversation about the different models of disability. And up until that point, I'd never even heard of such a concept. I didn't know that there were different models for disability. And I was surrounded by people who were taking up space and were proud to be disabled. And at first, that was a very jarring experience for me. And then coming home to Queensland with all of this kind of new energy, trying to figure out what that means for me and who I am. And coming to realize that I think living in Queensland is possibly part of the reason why I didn't identify as a proud disabled person. No hate or disrespect to Queensland. It's beautiful here, but we definitely have a much smaller, what seems to be a much smaller disability arts community where people are working in their own segregated little areas, their own little pockets. And so I basically started my master's degree looking at researching accessible theatre practice, possibly a bit selfishly so that I could make sure I had a job in the future. But in that process and going through the initial stages of research and looking at the models of disability, identifying with the social model of disability, where there's nothing wrong with my body, it's the barriers that I face in society that disable me, that really fundamentally changed my outlook. And I think that was roughly the time that the Stella Young Award became a thing, and I saw the applications open and I had to try and cram everything that I was thinking and feeling into this application. And I think even at that point, I was still dipping my toes in, so to speak. You know, there is an underlying fear of what the abled folk might say or how they might discriminate against me further by identifying proudly as disabled. But I'm here and I can't walk straight and I'm proud of it. That's where we're at.
Brilliant. Maddie, you, as well as a performer, you're obviously a writer, and you have written something about this. You've got a piece of text that has evolved through your journey, I suppose, and I wondered if you'd be up for sharing that with us.
Yes, of course. So for some context, I'm a member of the Indelibility Arts Ensemble and have been since 2015. And our very first show was a show called Look Mum No Hands, the Legless Bar Years. And so for this show, I wrote a song called Madeline, because I'm obnoxious. I'm going to write a song about myself. But in that, I was 19. You know, I've grown and evolved since then. But yeah, and in that song, it was basically everything that I thought I hadn't been allowed to say about myself, about disability. And at that point, I felt very stuck and I resented my identity back then. I resented who I was. I resented that disability even existed because it made my life harder and it made people treat me a certain way. So I was angry at 19. And so if I can, I'm just going to share the first chorus that I wrote for this show. So the original chorus went, I never asked for this. I promise I never wanted this. I never ever asked for this. I don't want to be like this. Why you gotta be like this? I never asked for this. Why would I ever want to be like this? I didn't ask for this. Reading that now makes me want to squirm because it makes me so uncomfortable that I ever felt like I wasn't right, I guess, in myself and in my body. So we've been doing that show off and on since 2015, 2016 was the first season. And I've got some new updated 2020 lyrics that I'd like to share that kind of helps represent where I am now a bit better. And so the new lyrics focus more so on the perception of me, not of actually who I am. The new lyrics go, I never asked for this. I promise I never wanted this. The me you made me out to be. I don't want to be like this. Why you got to be like this? I never ever asked for this. Your pity, grief, your disbelief, I didn't ask for this. And I feel like that's probably the most concise snapshot of how my perception of myself has shifted over the past 5-6 years, but also as an artist, being able to stand up and represent myself wholly and completely without minimizing or, attributing blame to myself for how other people might see me negatively. And there's another second chorus that I actually tweaked along the way. I resonate with, or this one resonates with me a lot stronger now than it did even when I wrote it. But now I'm really proud of, I think I was 21 when I changed these lyrics, or 22. Second chorus is, you don't get to speak for me and you can't have my dignity, my strength, my pride, my everything. I didn't ask for this. And the not asking for this is how people respond negatively. So those snapshots hopefully provide a little glimpse into how baby Maddie turned into Madeline Little, the growing person that I still am today. I'm not there yet, but we're getting bolder and prouder as we go.
It's such a significant evolution, Maddie, from the beginning to the last piece, which is just incredible. And obviously that's what we saw. We saw that evolution. And I think when I came back from living in the UK, I started to realize that people are evolving all the time, particularly around their disability politics, where they are in terms of language, about how people want to engage with language, whether they are ready to call themselves disabled people and can see that as a term of pride, or if that still feels like it's uncomfortable. But I, rightly or wrongly, am leading Arts Access Victoria that way. We are changing our language, and we are proudly working with capital D deaf and capital D disabled people and artists. So it's a kind of shift that feels important.
Yeah, absolutely.
The stuff that you talk about around perception as well, I think, is another crucial thing, and stuff around expectation. And I think that is something that we need to be talking about more, raising more, being more aware of ourselves. And you use the term internalized ableism. Can you expand on that a bit, just in case people don't?
We don't have a lot of time, do we? Okay. Internalized ableism. In a snapshot, if I had to explain it for someone who has absolutely no idea, it would be, if you think disability is a bad thing and that's something that you're projecting upon yourself and that's something that you are dealing with. So for me, my internalized ableism would be, perhaps ignoring the searing pain in my legs for standing for 2 minutes longer than I should, because I don't want to be seen as different for asking for a chair when everyone else is standing. That's like a very basic level thing. Or internalized ableism is just a pot of seething resentment that you don't really know that you have. It's bitter and it's gross and it just sits there and it curdles, and you don't really realize until it just comes out somehow, and someone is there next to you saying, hang on a minute, you're okay. That's basically what happened with me when I went to Perth. Is I went to this residency, couldn't see a chair that I could comfortably sit in and get up from, had to ask for another chair, and I instantly apologized for needing another chair. And it was Gail Mellis who just put her hand on my arm. First time I've met her. First time I met her, she put her arm on my arm and said, don't apologize. That's your access. And it was like this switch just went off. Like, I'm entitled to exist comfortably and safely? Shock, horror. What is this feeling? And that's when the internalized ableism just kind of pushed down a little bit, and okay, we're starting to deal with this. We're starting to see how disability in itself isn't a bad thing. The barriers that we face are the bad things. I'm great. I'm fine. I might wobble. I might not be able to move. I might feel pain. I might look weird when I get up from a chair, but I'm great. The chairs aren't, but I am. And internalized ableism is learning to blame the chairs and not blame me. That was probably a long-winded explanation.
I think it's a great explanation. I think it's one that doesn't get talked about enough. But let's talk about art, Maddie.
Yes.
We're both artists. I don't live in that world as much as I want to anymore, but we're both makers. And
Yes.
I would love to talk about your show Holds that you made in 2018.
I started in 2018, yeah, and it carried through last year as well.
And potentially influenced by the workshop that you did with Jenny Seeley and just your general ongoing commitment.
Yeah.
You worked with embedding access in that show to make it as accessible as it could be to as many people as possible. How did you do that? What was that like?
Oh boy. I mean, with the caveat that it was for my master's research with a student budget of whatever money I could scrounge up. But yeah, the residency with Jenny Seeley was my first glimpse of an arts practice that embedded access, not just as an add-on, like having a sign language interpreter off to the side, having like a captioning device, but embedding all of that into the work, but also into the creating process as well, learning how to communicate and create across all sorts of people with all sorts of access requirements and do so in a respectful way that actually was just as compelling and as engaging as, you know, being in a rehearsal room with a non-disabled folk. And so that was the first little glimpse that I had, and I took with me, and I was like, whatever project I do, it needs to be as accessible as I can make it, and it needs to be as authentic as I can make it. And it was really important to me that the work didn't focus on disability, that disability was not the narrative that drove the work, because I mean, I am turning 25 this year, for example. Not everything that I do, say, think, feel is related to disability. You know, I have work, I have friends, I have a personal life or a lack of personal life, thanks to isolation. And I've got all of these different elements that make me, you know, a human that would be really great to explore in theatre in an accessible way. And just to have some authentic disabled voices on stage as well. We're multidimensional human beings, and that's important. So in saying that, I didn't have a firm concept of the show until one of my friends said that I should take my poems and turn them into a show. And that became the start of the process. I decided, okay, I don't want an Auslan interpreter. I want integrated Auslan. I want a character who signs. I want to try and have open captions as part of the set design. And as it kept going from the first development in 2018 to last year's very short run, I then said, okay, well, how can we start looking at audio description? We didn't have the capacity to do full-blown audio description to the extent that I would like, but I wanted it to be integrated. So little things like a quirky little narrator character describing me as a short, curvy little thing with long red hair that needs a bit of a trim. You know, you can say, okay, well, I know what she looks like, but I also know, hang on a minute, that's a character injecting some humor in. I know not a lot of people are definitely on board with that type of audio description, but for me, it was part of the process, experimenting with these different types of access tools and aesthetics and trying to find ways to make it work on a very small budget. And like I said, it was also about authenticity. You know, one of my characters is portrayed by a fantastic deaf actor, and she was just phenomenal. And some of the best moments in the show are when she and our shadow interpreter are having a little joke off to the side in Auslan, or, you know, maybe she's having a go at my character for being a little victim, so to speak. So it's hard to explain too, because I just feel like it's part of how I want to make theatre, that I don't think necessarily about access is something to consider. It's just something that is there. It's like, it's a given. I'm going to create a show. Auslan will be part of it. It has to be, because that's just how I make work now. But it's also really hard trying to juggle, how do I do that and then represent my work to an arts community that will automatically put it in the disability arts community theatre type box, that there's possibly no other real creative merit to the work because they can't get past the open captioning. They can't get past the fact that I'm walking weird as I come on stage, what have you. It's really important that work is accessible, not just for audiences, but for artists as well. It's about creating opportunities for as many of us as I can. It's about trying to make sure I have work in the future. But it's also about, like, you can't be what you can't see. And I didn't see a single theatre maker and performer that I could relate to as I studied. And I think I just am sick of that. I want to make work that makes people think that they can make work and be represented as well. And that's what accessible theatre is. I know it's not perfect at the moment the way I'm doing it. I would love more money and more research and more time, but that's what I'm trying to do. And I hope that that somewhat makes sense.
That's brilliant. I would go even further, and this is a statement that I've made publicly many times, and that is, if we as makers are in receipt of public funding, then we should be making work for the public, which includes people with access requirements as well. So actually, my new hashtag is access is not optional. Maddie, we're getting lots of questions. One is particularly about your T-shirt and where you got it and where people can get it. So Maddie's T-shirt, sorry, do you want to describe it?
Yeah, sure. It's a black T-shirt with bold white text that says "The future is accessible." This T-shirt, I bought it years ago now, but there was a Twitter user, Elaine Segara, I believe is her handle. I'll have to look that up. But they were selling shirts that have "The future is accessible." I have another one. Oh, look, I have lots of disability shirts at this point. But anyway, this one, it was roughly $30. And at the time, I believe it was a fundraiser to help provide wheelchairs for people who desperately needed them in the US. But Elaine Segara is was my original link. I'm not too sure if that site is still up, but we can have a look, and hopefully I'll, if I find it, I'll post it on my Twitter tonight. My Twitter is @NotMadeline.
@NotMadeline.
Not Madeline, yeah, because Madeline Little was taken by someone in the States, so.
Rude.
I know.
Very rude. There is another question from the brilliant Malika in Perth. Hi, Malika.
Hello, Malika.
As a disabled artist and young leader, which is what you are, Maddie, what is your advice to young people coming up who have others in their life saying, leave the artist idea and find other work? That age-old statement of, why don't you get a real job?
Don't stop what you're doing. I think if I had $1 for every time someone had said that to me, I'd have enough money to stage 3 shows. I think it's tricky as an artist. And particularly in these times where we don't have a lot of work going on, I do understand that there is that question about financial stability for artists in general. But I think for a deaf or disabled artist to hear that kind of pushback more often, I think it's just, quite frankly, ableist. If you have a passion and you're willing to pursue it and do the work to, you know, upskill or go for the opportunities and do whatever you want to do, go with your gut, follow it. Because if I had given up, I would not be here talking to the wonderful Caroline. I would not have been so fortunate to have received the Stella Young Award and to have the opportunities that came from that. I honestly try to live by, what do I want for me and how am I going to get there? and who's going to support me in getting there. And to begin to know the difference between what is genuine concern, like, are you okay? Or just frankly unsupportive people. We just have to watch out for that, and being able to identify if that lack of support stems from ableism, subconscious internalized ableism or disbelief, or if it's just, hey, how are you going to buy groceries? Well, why don't you buy me lunch instead, and then I'll continue my arts career. It works out. It works out. Just go with your gut. If you're passionate about it, just follow it as much as you can, and there are people that can help you get there.
And Maddie, just a little question to finish.
Okay.
If you could change one thing about the arts and cultural sector in the future post-COVID world, what would it be?
Ooh.
Just one, Maddie. Just one thing.
Just one. Ooh, okay. I would say more project-based opportunities and funding for disabled and deaf artists. I think we have lots of funding, well, not lots, we have some funding opportunities for mentorship and training and upskilling. But I also know that I would be a much stronger artist now, a much more confident artist now, if I had been able to produce more work up until this point. And the fact that I am disabled does mean I don't get the same opportunities as my non-disabled peers who have just as much training as I do. So if there were more targeted funding and project-based opportunities, I really think that that would help boost representation. It would boost opportunities, and honestly, it would make for some amazing work that needs to be out there in the Australian landscape.
Brilliant. I'm going to squeeze one more in.
Okay, go for it.
Which is from the brilliant Jeremy Hawkes. And it's a great one, Jeremy. Do you think there is a disability arts movement in Australia? And if so, what does it look like?
There is, but I had to leave Queensland to find it. And that's something that is really tricky. I see elements of it in Victoria when I visit, and Perth and whatnot. I think at the moment, to me, it looks like a bunch of us getting together and trying to work out, how do we make work? How do we make work together? Where do we go? What do we do? At the moment, it feels like just a massive conversation that has multiple, I guess, avenues to take in future. I don't feel like I can comfortably or confidently say I know definitively what it is, because of this segregation that I feel living in Queensland and being so distant from the bulk of the disability arts community and the movement. I feel like we get the information about 3 months later than the rest of the states do. But it's something that I'm really hoping to, I guess, bridge the gap between us so I can find out more. And I just saw Anna's comment, 3 months, try at least 3 years. I was trying to be diplomatic, but that's fairly on the money there. Yeah, it's too big a question to answer in a minute. I'm sorry.
We could have started with that one at 12:05 and still been going on it, I think.
Exactly.
Maddie, I just want to say a huge thank you to you. I have the very huge privilege of being your mentor, not that you need me, for the next year. Thanks to the award that you won last year that you got from Arts Access Australia as a leadership award. So I very much look forward to watching your ongoing development over the next year. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom with us today. Thank you all for being here with us. It's so lovely to see and know that you're all here with us. Their little lunches keep going every day. They're gorgeous. They're exciting, whoever's on. So 12 to 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, wherever that is for you. And we will look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Bye.